Anna finds Isaiah at the Brown Dog Bar and asks him if he could be her cover. She is waiting for Felicia but has just noticed Emma is here with a man at least 10 years older than her, and she is intrigued by whatever is going on. He agrees to help her. Anna is suspicious. Vaughn tells Emma that they should get out of here and find a quieter place to talk. She knows a place near campus, and as they prepare to leave, Anna stops them and asks Emma who her friend is. Emma says they were just headed out, but Anna insists on buying them a drink, so they grab a table. Anna gets a text that Felicia can't make it, which gives her time to get to know Emma's friend. He introduces himself and says he knows Emma from PCU, where he works in the facilities department. Anna asks if he attended PCU many years ago. Vaughn excuses himself to use the men's room, and Anna tells Emma that the man is at least 10 years older than her. Emma says she's an adult and can date who she wants, but Anna thinks she's using Vaughn to perhaps break into another lab, seeing that he's involved with the facilities department. Is it over for Kai and Trina? At the gallery, Trina cleans up after the show and asks Kai where he's been. He tells her about Jacinda disappearing and hearing her dad talking to Felicia about it. Trina doesn't understand why they are discussing this. Kai admits he tipped Drew off to what her dad was planning. Trina is shocked by what Kai did, and after discussing how it's not any of their business, Kai goes off on how what Curtis was planning was wrong, and he couldn't let him get away with hurting Drew, who has been good to him. She wishes his loyalty extended to her as much as it did to Drew. She wonders if he even hesitated in betraying her family. Kai swears he struggled with this, but he couldn't stand by and let something wrong happen. How can she expect him to sit back and let someone be destroyed for something they didn't do? Would she want to be with a person who is okay with that? She's not sure she wants to be with him at all. Are Portia and Curtis going to make it? At Aurora, Portia shows up and tells Curtis that Trina's show was great, and she thought he'd be there. Curtis says he was busy being blackmailed by Drew again. He tells her how Kai blew up his plan to bring Jacinda here and stop Drew. Portia says this is bad as Trina really cares for Kai. Curtis says Drew has them right where he wants them, and Portia knows it's because of her. Curtis promises he won't let Drew take her down. Portia knows he's only doing this for Trina, and she wishes he'd protect her because she is his wife. Curtis admits she did cause this, and he is doing this to protect himself and Trina. He wishes he could say he was doing it to protect her. Portia lashes out that she's sorry she's not worthy of his honorable intentions, but assumes Jordan is. She tells him not to wait up and storms off. Laura talks to Lulu and Rocco at Lulu's. She tells her mother that Brook Lynn has gone after Rocco to get back at her, and now he knows about Britt Westbourne. Laura is confused, and Lulu explains that she and Dante never got to tell Rocco about Britt, and Brook Lynn did this to hurt her. Up in his room, Rocco searches online for information about Britt. Laura says they won't let Brook Lynn get away with this, but to focus on Rocco and what he needs to know now. Lulu says he needs to understand that she and Dante are his parents, and the only parents he's known. She feels like Rocco is pulling away from her. Laura says that at his age, information like this can rattle a young person, and it can be painful for a child to find out their parents had complicated pasts, but this will pass. Laura says Rocco may have questions, but he knows how much Lulu loves him and that she is a wonderful mother. Later, Rocco finds Laura sitting on the porch. She heard he had a rough few days. He talks with his grandma as Lulu listens in. Rocco admits he can't get over the fact that his parents didn't choose to have him, that he was stolen. Laura tells Rocco how desperate his parents were to have him, and he was their little miracle when he showed up. She says he never has to question his parents' love for him, and it's something he can depend on for the rest of his life. Laura asks him to remember that he is their miracle and always will be. Rocco thanks her. She tells him he's allowed to ask questions and to keep asking them until he's satisfied, as this is his life. They hug and Rocco calls her the best. Tracy wants Chase to lay down the law on the Quartermain estate. Tracy finds Chase having just gotten done with a swim. She warns him that Brook Lynn is headed for disaster, and he needs to stop her. She fears Brook Lynn will blow up her life pursuing revenge against Lulu. Chase is quiet, and Tracy asks if he thinks Brook Lynn is justified in what she's doing. Chase says what Lulu did was wrong, and she went after Brook Lynn and Gio in the worst way possible. Tracy asks if he's going to help Brook Lynn punish Lulu. He has no idea if his wife is planning something, and he doesn't police her. Tracy says no good can come from Lulu and Brook Lynn destroying one another. She loves them both, but they are only hurting each other and themselves. Chase knows Tracy isn't wrong. She asks him to convince Brook Lynn that the way forward is by building a family and a relationship with him and their children, including her son. Dante lashes out at Brook Lynn in the Q's living room. Michael finds Brook Lynn crying in the dark. He asks what is going on. She tells her that Gio hates her, and she doesn't know if things can get any worse. That's when Dante storms in and asks her how she could do that to his son. Dante yells that this is a new low to be so vicious to Rocco. Michael tells Dante to take a step back, but Dante fumes over Brook Lynn making a file on Brit and leaving it out where anyone could have found it. Brook Lynn swears it was an accident, and nobody was supposed to find it. Dante says it sounds like she wanted Rocco to find it, and that she did this to hurt Lulu and this has to stop. He says she can't keep blaming Lulu for Gio thinking she gave him up without a second thought, and that's all on her. Michael tells Dante to stop. Michael says Dante has no right to judge Brook Lynn, and he has no idea what it was like for her to give up that baby. Brook Lynn thanks Michael but says this is something she and Dante need to work out themselves. Michael leaves them, and Brook Lynn tells Dante to let her have it again. Dante says what he said about Gio was out of line, but for her to use his son crossed a line as well. Brook Lynn swears it wasn't her intention, and she regrets Rocco getting caught in the crossfire. She knows this is the worst thing she's ever done. She says she only wanted to hurt Lulu and give her a taste of her own medicine, and she never meant for Rocco to see the file. She knows Rocco is hurting and it's her fault, and she has to live with that. She cries that she's sorry, and Dante appreciates her saying that. Brook Lynn cries that Gio thinks she did this on purpose, and hates her even more. Dante believes she's sorry, but that won't fix what Rocco and Gio are feeling. Brook Lynn thinks that now that Gio hates her and thinks she's the worst, he might be more open to Dante. Is Portia about to cross the line? Back at Aurora, Michael arrives having gotten Curtis' text. Curtis warns him about the headline story about to drop across all Aurora outlets. Did Sonny Corinthos end Natalia Ramirez? Michael assumes this is Drew's doing. Curtis rants that he was so close to stopping Drew, but now he's out of options. He doesn't feel that he and Portia have what it takes to make it through this. At the Brown Dog, Portia sits next to Isaiah. She vents that she ran into Jordan, and she is trying to steal her husband. However, she was right about one thing. If her marriage ends, then she has nobody to blame but herself. Isaiah tells her that she shouldn't have to be putting all this effort into fighting to prove herself to her husband, and maybe he's the problem. What's Emma's real plan? Vaughn returns to Anna and Emma when Joss appears and declares, "Okay Vaughn, you win." He asks why she's here. Emma reveals she told Joss that they were going out, and asks Joss if she is stalking them. Joss says she still has Vaughn's location in her phone, and calls Emma out on snatching up the guy she just broke up with. Joss tells Vaughn it's either her or Emma. Vaughn tells Emma that he's sorry. Joss is super crazy but he's into it in her. He says he's sorry and goes with Joss. Anna clearly is suspicious. In the show's final moments at the bar, Joss tells Vaughn he's welcome for the save, and if he thinks that act worked. Vaughn says they have to sell this as Anna is sharp and onto him, so she kisses him. Anna and Emma spot the kiss and Anna says that they are a bit intense. Emma says Joss never misses an opportunity to embarrass herself. Anna tells Emma it's best she does not get involved with this guy, and perhaps it worked out for the best. Emma says perhaps she's right. Emma palms a key marked Master, which she appears to have lifted from Vaughn. Isaiah tells Portia maybe it's time she starts playing her own game, not Jordan's, and a game one she won't lose. Portia thanks him and buys them the next round. At Aurora, Curtis hopes he and Portia are stronger than Drew's manipulations. Michael says Curtis needs to protect his family, and he has to do the same and warn his dad about the headlines about to drop. At the gallery, Kai tells Trina that none of this means he's disloyal to her, and all he did was tell the truth. She cries that he made a choice and he chose Drew. She will always choose her family no matter what, and he'll never be family to her. Kai tells Trina that he loves her. She screams at him to get out. He leaves and she collapses on a bench in tears. At the Quartermain estate, Chase tells Tracy that she's right, and BLQ's priority should be Gio. Tracy is glad they agree. He appreciates her concern about their marriage, but nothing Brook Lynn could do would ever drive him away. In the living room, Dante says he can't get past what she did to Rocco, but she intended to do right by their son when she gave Gio up. It came from a place of love, and Gio needs to know and feel that they love him. He has to believe they'll have a chance to show him. Brooklyn cries that she hopes so, and they embrace. On her porch, Lulu thanks her mom. She knows it helped Rocco to hear what she said, and it helped her too. Laura says Rocco is going to be fine and to have faith in him. Back on his laptop, Rocco fires off an email to Albrecht, introducing himself as her once-upon-a-time grandson. On the next General Hospital, Carly and Sunny learn what's happened to Daisy from Michael, and Willow confesses to Isaiah. Michael drove me to all of it. General Hospital spoilers hint that after the Monday, July 7th episode, there's a good chance that Emma Scorpio Drake falls into a romance with Vaughn. So could the WSB agent make a massive blunder by getting the university student pregnant? Along with Jocelyn Jacks, Vaughn concocted a plan to deter Emma from Professor Henry Hank Dalton's orbit, and their own investigation of him by preoccupying her with someone else. While Vaughn and Joss have sparks, they were also faking a relationship as a cover for when Emma caught the two in Dalton's office. With that said, the two broke off their fake relationship in a very public way during the July 7th episode at the Metro Court Pool, to get Emma's attention, and have her gravitate toward Vaughn. Emma took the bait, and it didn't take long for her to approach Vaughn, with a drink in hand, to console him after Joss made a major scene of it all. Vaughn and Emma struck up a good conversation, and as the 4th of July fireworks began, Emma even canoodled a bit with Vaughn, while a jealous Joss watched on. All arrows are pointing toward Vaughn romancing Emma, which also means he'll romance her away from whatever was going on between her and Giovanni Gio Palmieri. Still, Gio does have a lot going on with his family issues, so maybe their love story is being put on hold for now. Vaughn is a character that's hard to gauge. He's new, he's mysterious, and he does seem like a creep, but that could be a wall he's built up to keep people out. It also could be a part of his WSB agent persona, so until he gets more airtime on canvas and talks about his past, it's hard to tell if Vaughn is a jerk or if there's a softie buried deep down somewhere in there. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see where this arc is going. Emma will fall hard for Vaughn, and Vaughn may even start to have feelings for Emma. However, in all of this, Joss will be miserable seeing the two of them together. Gio may also get worked into the mix, since he has feelings for his friend. But how far will Vaughn go in seducing Emma? Could the two get caught up in emotion? The lines between real and fake can be blurred at times when it comes to romance. Plus, he may need to keep Emma preoccupied with a mission Joss is on, and things could get out of hand. Could Emma and Vaughn end up in bed? If that were to occur, then there's also a good chance that Emma could wind up pregnant. This would blow the entire storyline out of the water, and create a ton of chaos and drama on so many different levels. Plus, Heck hath no fury like Anna Devane, so Vaughn may regret the day he agreed to this romancing Emma plan if she finds out. General Hospital spoilers imply that while Vaughn was a part of Jocelyn's WSB training, even the most qualified agents make mistakes, and taking a fake romance too far, where Emma gets pregnant, would be a massive mistake on Vaughn's part. So what would the ramifications be? Dante couldn't take it anymore. The weight of recent days, the ache he had tried to numb with long hours on the job, and the pressure of watching his son unravel from afar had all finally reached a breaking point. Brook Lynn stood before him in the Metro Court, her usually vibrant eyes shadowed with guilt, and all he could see was Rocco's heartbreak. Dante's voice shook, not with uncertainty, but with rage that had been quietly festering. He didn't yell at people, not often, but Brook Lynn had crossed a line. His son was hurting, and she was part of the reason why. Brook Lynn had tried to explain, to rationalize, but it didn't matter to Dante. He didn't want excuses. What he wanted was for anyone, to stop playing games with the people he loved. Rocco had been struggling ever since Lulu's absence turned permanent. The kid had lost his anchor. And now that he was finally opening up, trusting again, forming fragile attachments, Brook Lynn's betrayal, intentional or not, felt like a cruel twist of fate. Dante told her as much. He didn't mince words. He reminded her that Rocco had already endured the loss of his mother, a wound that never fully healed. And now, someone he had looked up to, someone he had started to believe in, Brook Lynn, had let him down. Whether it was her latest music industry deal that spiraled into something messier, or a personal choice that bled over into the family, the end result was the same. Rocco had pulled away. Lyn's lips trembled, and for once she didn't fight back. She didn't bring up all the things she was dealing with, her battles with Lois, her tense dynamic with Chase, her role in Deception's collapse. Because in this moment she knew it wasn't about her. It was about a boy who had needed something stable and got chaos instead. And Dante's words, sharp and cutting, were deserved. Still, the pain in her chest made it hard to breathe. Lynn loved Rocco in her own way. She didn't want to hurt him. She just kept making mistakes, one after another, until they stacked so high that even she couldn't climb out. Dante's anger wasn't just about her. It was about everything that had gone wrong for Rocco. And as she stood there trying to steady herself, trying not to cry in front of him, she realized something else. Maybe she had underestimated how deep her presence had embedded in Rocco's life. While the adults in his orbit continued to spiral, Rocco had been quietly figuring things out for himself. And one of those steps, one Dante hadn't seen coming, was reaching out to someone no one expected. First, Dante didn't know. He thought Rocco had just gone quiet again, retreating to his room, diving into games or schoolwork as a way of coping. But when he caught a glimpse of a text notification flashing across Rocco's screen while checking in one evening, the name stopped him cold. It wasn't someone local. It wasn't someone Rocco was supposed to be talking to. It was Spencer Cassadine. The shock took a second to register. Spencer was halfway around the world in hiding, after the Esme disaster and the bloody fallout that followed him all the way to Paris. No one had heard from him in months, and everyone had assumed he'd cut ties for good. But somehow, someway, Rocco had found a way to reach him. And even more surprising, Spencer had answered. The conversation was brief, just a few messages at first, but it grew. Rocco had questions, some sharp-edged, others tender. He wanted to know how to handle being angry, how to protect yourself from people you love disappointing you, how to not hate the ones who leave, even when it feels like they ripped a hole through your world. And to Dante's astonishment, Spencer didn't feed Rocco lies or platitudes. He told the truth, his version of it, messy and raw. He didn't sugarcoat his past or hide from it. Instead, he admitted he was still trying to figure out what kind of man he wanted to be. Rocco, in return, opened up more than he ever had with Dante, because Spencer wasn't a parent, or a teacher, or even an authority figure anymore. He was someone who had broken things and survived. Someone who understood what it felt like to be angry at the world. When Dante confronted Rocco, it wasn't with the same fire he had turned on Lynn. This was different. Rocco didn't deny it, and he didn't look ashamed. He simply said, "He listens." That gutted Dante more than he expected. He had tried to be everything Rocco needed. But how could he compete with someone who could speak to the storm inside his son because they had lived through it? Still, he couldn't let it go unchallenged. Spencer was a wild card, and the last thing Rocco needed was another mentor who might vanish or spiral or betray him. So Dante made a decision. He wouldn't cut the connection, not yet, but he would monitor it closely. He would step into that space, not as a cop or even as a father trying to control, but as a man who wanted to understand his son better. He started asking questions, careful ones. He asked Rocco what he talked about with Spencer and what he got out of those talks. And when Rocco answered, something shifted. There was a raw honesty there, the kind Dante hadn't seen in months. It wasn't just about Spencer. It was about how alone Rocco felt. About how even when people meant well, they kept breaking promises. About how he missed Lulu in ways that made him feel like he couldn't breathe some days. Lynn's name came up too. Not with venom but with hurt. Rocco had thought she'd be different. He didn't even blame her for being messy. He just wished she had stayed in his corner a little longer. He missed the music nights, the late-night pizza runs. He missed being able to trust someone and not wonder if they'd walk away. Dante took that all in and realized just how much Rocco had been burying. He later returned to Lynn, not with the same fury, but with something quieter, sadder. He told her what Rocco had said. And for the first time she cried, not from guilt but from regret. She didn't ask for forgiveness, not yet. But she asked for the chance to make it right. She wanted to talk to Rocco if he'd let her. Dante agreed. But it had to be on Rocco's terms. Meanwhile, Rocco's contact with Spencer continued, cautiously. Spencer, now aware that Dante knew, treaded lightly. He didn't encourage rebellion. Didn't fan the flames of resentment. In fact, he told Rocco to give his dad a break. You don't realize how hard it is until you're older, he said. Until you're trying to protect someone and keep from breaking down all at once. Spencer, for all his flaws, was trying to be better. And Rocco saw that. That bond, as unconventional as it was, gave Rocco something none of the adults had managed to. A sense that he wasn't completely alone in the world. That even in the middle of chaos, there were people who understood how deeply things could hurt, and who wouldn't lie to him about it. Back in Port Charles, Dante kept showing up. For breakfast. For after-school talks. For awkward moments when silence stretched and he didn't know what to say. He stopped trying to fix everything and just started listening. He shared stories too. Not always about crime scenes or arrests, but about his own youth, his own mistakes. He told Rocco about the anger he had toward Sonny growing up. About what it meant to forgive someone, even when you didn't want to. About what it meant to hold space for disappointment and love at the same time. Eventually, Lynn reached out. She wrote Rocco a letter, an actual letter, not a text, and handed it to Dante. It was sincere, awkward in places, but real. She told him she missed him. That she understood why he was angry. That if he ever wanted to talk or yell or just hang out in silence, she'd be there. No pressure. Rocco didn't respond right away. But he kept the letter. And that night, instead of texting Spencer, he reread Lynn's words twice. Maybe there was still a path forward. Not the one they all hoped for, neat and tidy, but a new one. Complicated, real, and earned. Dante knew they still had a long way to go. Trust would take time. Healing wouldn't be linear. But something had shifted. And for the first time in a long while, he believed they could find their way back. Not as the perfect family, but as one that fought to stay together, even when things were broken. Vaughn never expected that his time in Port Charles would come with so many complications. He arrived with nothing but a file and a mission, operating under WSB jurisdiction to investigate a quietly mounting crisis within the organization. But the last thing he anticipated was meeting Emma Scorpio Drake. Smart, passionate, and carrying the kind of emotional gravity that made him question everything. Vaughn's training didn't prepare him for what started as casual camaraderie to evolve into something deeper, and it certainly didn't prepare him for the consequences of a night neither of them intended to mean much. Emma had just returned to Port Charles for what was supposed to be a temporary visit. Her life in California had hit a few rough patches, and she needed some time to regroup. She hadn't expected to reconnect so deeply with the town she left behind, nor had she expected to meet a man like Vaughn. A quiet, brooding newcomer who seemed out of place yet perfectly at home in chaos. Their initial interactions were cautious. Emma, having grown up around spies and secrets, sensed something off about Vaughn immediately. But there was also something familiar in the way he held himself, the way he looked at her like he already knew how much she'd been through. One night everything shifted. Vaughn had been dealing with intense pressure from the WSB regarding a potentially explosive internal leak. Emma had been grappling with the confusion of reuniting with her past while trying to forge her future. They ran into each other after hours at the Metro Court bar, both clearly unraveling. One drink led to another, and soon they were in his room, tangled in an impulsive, emotionally charged encounter that neither of them truly processed until days later. What started as a mistake neither could quite define quickly turned into a massive complication. Emma discovered she was pregnant. She was stunned. It wasn't just that she was carrying a child. It was that the father was a man who could vanish without warning, who served an agency known for erasing the lives of its operatives when secrets became liabilities. She wasn't sure what shocked her more, the pregnancy itself or the sudden fear that Vaughn might disappear the moment he found out. Telling him was harder than she expected. Vaughn was silent for a long time when she broke the news. He didn't react with anger or disbelief. Instead, he stared at the floor as if every corner of his life had suddenly collapsed inward. Emma waited for him to offer a solution or an escape, but what came out of his mouth startled her. "I'll stay." He was sincere but haunted. Emma didn't know whether to believe him or not. It wasn't just about staying. It was about facing the enormous fallout from this unplanned connection. Behind the scenes, the WSB was in turmoil. Vaughn's involvement with Emma, the daughter of two former agency assets, was more than an indiscretion. It was considered a breach. His mission was delicate, and now because of one night everything had been compromised. Whispers in WSB corridors began to paint him as a liability. He was followed. His communications were monitored. Internal memos flagged the situation as escalating. Vaughn knew what that meant. They were preparing to cut him loose. Or worse, make him disappear entirely. Meanwhile, Emma started experiencing threats of her own. It began subtly. An unmarked envelope on her doorstep, anonymous texts warning her to end it now, and shadows where there shouldn't have been any. It became obvious the WSB wasn't just upset. They were moving into containment mode. Emma wasn't just collateral anymore. She was a problem. Vaughn went into protection mode fast. He moved her out of her apartment and into a safe house, relying on old contacts to cover their tracks. But the damage had already been done. Port Charles had noticed her absence. And with a town as tightly interwoven as theirs, secrets didn't stay buried for long. Robert Scorpio was the first to catch on. He'd always been protective of Emma, but his instincts flared when he realized someone in the WSB was trying to bury a connection between her and one of their active operatives. He confronted Vaughn in classic Scorpio fashion, controlled fury behind cold eyes. Vaughn didn't deny it. He couldn't. Robert was stunned, not only by the relationship but by how far the WSB had allowed it to spiral. He demanded answers, but Vaughn was short on intel. The truth was, no one knew how big this was going to get. Back at the safe house, Emma wrestled with the weight of her reality. She was going to have a child. The father was being hunted by the very people who employed him. And worse, there were murmurs that Vaughn had been exposed to information so classified, it could put all of them in danger. She didn't want to run, but staying in Port Charles was becoming increasingly unsafe. Every time she stepped outside, she felt eyes on her. Every call from an unknown number felt like a threat. Vaughn insisted he would fix it. But even he was beginning to realize how powerless he had become. Jason Morgan heard the rumors next. His instinct was to keep his distance, but the fact that Emma was involved, and potentially in danger, made it impossible. He had a long history with the Scorpio family, and despite all the lines that had been crossed, he respected them. Vaughn asked for Jason's help smuggling Emma out of Port Charles. It wasn't just about protection anymore. It was about survival. Jason reluctantly agreed, knowing full well that crossing the WSB came with a price. The plan was simple. Fake Emma's departure under a different name, reroute her to a clinic where she could get medical care under the radar, and then disappear until Vaughn could dismantle whatever was hunting them. But the WSB was one step ahead. They intercepted the escape route, forcing Jason into a standoff that nearly ended in bloodshed. Vaughn showed up at the last second, exposing himself to save Emma. In doing so, he burned every bridge he had left. Now Vaughn is on the run. Emma is in hiding, scared and uncertain of what the future holds. She's carrying the child of a man who may never be able to return to her side. And the WSB, once seen as the shadowy protectors of international order, have revealed just how merciless they can be when their secrets are at risk. Everyone in Port Charles is talking, trying to figure out what really happened, and if this is just the beginning of something far more dangerous. What started as a tragic mistake has become something much bigger. A child is coming into the world, born of love, fear and deception. And as Vaughn fades into the shadows, Emma is left to decide whether she will raise this baby alone, or continue to fight for the man who gave up everything to protect them.